Hi, everyone. My name is Sally Hayes, and I am the founder of Matricas, and I'm so excited to introduce all of these wonderful humans today. So we have Kelly, Abigail, and Andee. We have Dr. Ivy joining us a little bit later. So I'm going to let everybody go ahead and introduce themselves. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about your work?
My name is Kelly Cox. I am the CEO and founder of Share the Drop. We are a web app that connects women with excess milk to families in need, all based on zip codes so families can find each other quickly, share milk easily, but also meet other women or families that are in the same lifestyle, time of life, and build little armies of parental support. I'm also a birth doula, a prenatal yoga teacher and trainer, and a former mental health therapist.
And Abigail.
Sure. So my name's Abby. I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner and a board certified nurse midwife. I have my own private practice and I see women for through all ages and stages of life, including the start of menses through the cessation of menses called menopause, as well as through the most amazing journey for many of us, which is pregnancy and labor, delivery, and postpartum phases, into a whole new journey of developing into a mother. And then I do a lot of primary care for women as well in my practice. And the deliveries that I do are done at Cedars in Los Angeles.
Awesome. And Andee?
Hi everyone, I'm Andee. I'm the founder of Your Wellness Mom Friend. I'm a wellness coach for moms with a master's in psychology and a certified Pilates instructor. I help women navigate their transition into motherhood. So my clients usually tend to be anyone entering the nesting period and all the way through postpartum. I help moms navigate this transition through mindfulness, movement, and wellness tools, everything under 10 minutes or less. I think it's very important to realize in today's world that I think there's just so much preparation happening around the baby. But I think there's not enough for ourselves as women and as moms to be. So I'm here to bridge that gap.
I love that. That's so great. So if anyone has questions at any point, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And if I miss that, please feel free to nudge me. And we will have Dr. Ivy Margulies joining us in the next 10 minutes. And let's get into it. So the first question I have for everyone is we talk about how it takes a village, but what does that actually look like in modern parenthood? How can we rebuild communal care in today's individualistic culture?
I talk about this all the time. We used to have babies in community with our like living next door or very close to aunties and grannies and sisters, and we just don't anymore. So I encourage my doula clients to go get involved in any community that's around them, surrounding pregnancy, motherhood. So is there a yoga or Pilates studio that's offering classes for you? Are there new mom support groups? Are there groups in your community where moms just regularly meet? Are there classes at maybe a birthing center that gathers moms who are pregnant around the same time? So anytime you can go out and build that community, I think it's going to help. That's your village, right? The new village is the chosen family.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kelly. And I think to bounce off of that, I think we just have to be more intentional about creating that community. It won't be the neighbor that just shows up at your door with the casserole and like coffee and be like, oh, I don't think you slept tonight. Or I don't think you have time to make food. Let me provide that for you. So I think it's also tied into that. I think it's giving ourselves that permission to ask for the help. Um, and then also, I think, somewhere where people like us, I think, can support moms to be, it's about professionals, right? It's about intentionally building that village around you of professionals prior to becoming a mother, whether it's a doula, whether it's a therapist, a wellness coach, something that can support the whole woman, not just, things that have to do with the baby.
Andee, I think that's actually a really great point because I think one of the largest things that I see in practice is that women are afraid to ask.
Yeah.
because in asking to them, it feels like they've failed. And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that we have to overcome is that asking for help or needing help does not equate to failure as a new mother or a second, third, fourth time mother. And that as humans, we all need help at different stages in our lives. And oftentimes, other people are so engrossed in their own life that if we don't feel comfortable reaching out and asking for that help, sometimes other people don't know or realize that we feel like we're drowning.
Yeah.
And that's sadly a normal kind of part of motherhood, right? That transition and those first few months of, especially as a first time mom, taking a baby home, figuring out how to keep this baby alive, figuring, right? We all leave the hospital at that moment thinking, oh my God, they just let me take this thing home and I don't even know how to care for it, right?
Yeah.
And, like you said, Kelly, we don't have the village like we used to. A lot of us don't even live near our family, right? We live across the coast, across the pond, across wherever. And we are learning to be much more reliant on the village that we are intentionally creating, like you said. So I think asking for help and not being afraid to be honest when you need it. And that's okay to say, I need help. Someone, who is it that can help me? And then creating that village that works for us, that aligns with our values or our morals or whatever our belief system is. Because the one thing I know for sure is that once you become a mother, society has done a very good job at setting up a way to tell you that you're always failing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, you breastfeed, you didn't bottle feed. Oh, you co-slept. Oh, you didn't sleep train. Oh, you're a working parent. Oh, you're a stay-at-home parent. Like, right? There's a lot of division in our country, let alone when we step into the role as a mother. And so finding that village that works for you really, I think, takes that component of aligning in a way that, not that we can't all agree to disagree on certain topics, but that way you're not setting your village up to then constantly also feel like you're not meeting those expectations of other people.
Yeah. And I think the time being pregnant, labor and delivery, that's the sprint. That's the stuff that we know how that's going to work. But the marathon is that first year. And so you have to set yourself up for success. And thinking about, I mean, I think of my role as a human, but in supporting moms is I learned how to ask for help and then how to accept it. And so every time a new mom does that, she's helping all the other women in the village do the same.
Yes, but to your point of it being the sprint, I think there's an element of that, that we don't acknowledge, which is our labor and our birth story, right? Our individual birth story is already the start of parenting. And when that doesn't go either a way that was hoped for or desired or was traumatic, that has set up our parenting journey already. And so we have to remember that, yes, that's the sprint, but that's also the start of it all. And, it really can, help or hinder those first good 6 months of a postpartum journey.
Yeah. I mean, you take that one step further, people who have to go through infertility treatment to get pregnant, they've already started this idea that my body's not quite working the way it's supposed to be. When women go on bed rest and they're told they have an incompetent cervix, what does she think about her body? And then when she goes into labor, she has this organ that's incompetent. I mean, we could go off on a snowball about this, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why honestly I think that anxieties and things like that around this whole topic can start really early on. Right? I think once really heavy, of course, like once you get pregnant in the first trimester, you're having nausea and all those things. But I think once you really start feeling the hormones kick in and you're doing certain things or thinking certain things like, what is going on right now? Why am I thinking this or why am I doing this? I think it can start really early on.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think that anxiety stems from the moment you get a line on the stick, right? Because again, with division, it's, oh my gosh, like, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? Am I going to forgo this? Am I going to forgo that? Am I going to go unmedicated? Am I going to go right? There's so much anxiety from the start on even how you want to manage your pregnancy, let alone what your hopes and expectations are for the delivery, right? And think of all that anxiety that now we're going to spill it over onto the postpartum, into our complete parenting journey, which is a whole nother set of anxieties that society gives us, right? And who knows what the answer to that is, aside from ensuring that you really have a village to support you through this transition, this monumental transition in your life.
So speaking of the village, and since Matricas is building the practitioner village, who are some practitioners, you can either name them directly or you can name their titles, that you regularly refer to?
IBCLCs all day long. I talk to my clients a lot about, we make birth plans, we should make a feeding plan. And just because you have breasts and you go into feeding, you're like, well, my plan is I'm going to put these breasts to work and that's going to be it. But going to see an IBCLC, all my doula clients have to see an IBCLC while they're still pregnant. I recommend going to any pregnancy, or sorry, lactation support groups at a hospital, birthing center, yoga studio, see if there's a little HA meeting in your area, but go do that education and soak in as much as you can, so that you walk into however you're going to feed. If you want to feed formula, do all the research about which brand, what ingredients are okay with you, what brand you have to want to use if it's available, but set yourself up for success.
I do a lot too with pelvic floor physical therapy, because I deal with a lot of incontinence, like stress incontinence or mixed incontinence, very early on postpartum through, years, years later. And also because one of the number one things that women are afraid of is tearing. And what I have found over the years is actually working with pelvic floor physical therapy, like 32, 33 weeks gestation through the delivery, actually has decreased the level of tearing, because they are learning how to relax their pelvic floor in those certain moments. And then obviously, yes, they work with them later on if they're having any other injuries or issues with incontinence later on in life. But so pelvic floor PT, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Abby. I think pelvic floor is really, really important, the healing, and I think it's one of those things that people don't necessarily speak about in the United States. I had to seek it out for myself when I was postpartum personally. In order to be referred to a pelvic therapist, I had to really stand my ground and say, I really feel like there's something really wrong right now. And I don't know who I should be going to, but can you please refer me to someone? So I'm the same as you. I'm very quick to refer pelvic therapists, regardless of what type of birth you had, for example. You
Mm-hmm.
go to pelvic therapy, whether you did a C-section and you just pushed even for 20 minutes because you were trying to do it natural and it didn't work out, or if you had a natural birth. And then the other things, I kind of try to think when I refer my clients to people, I really try to think about the whole experience holistically, like mind and body. So I also like to refer people to, for example, one of the things is that I'm really a fan of is hypnobirthing. I think it helps people put themselves into that calm mind and space and know it. Like if any of you are familiar with this, it has nothing to do with actual hypnosis. It's more about that mindset. It's about making that environment calm and nice when you're giving birth, even if you're doing it in a hospital. And the other thing, like we were speaking earlier before we started the panel, is lactation. I think I think breastfeeding is one of those things that it's expected to be fully natural. It's supposed to just be so easy. Oh, I have my breast, I'm going to be able to breastfeed. But I think it's one of those things that ends up being so incredibly difficult. So I always really like to refer these types of practitioners along with the mindfulness and the tips that I offer through my coaching.
I also think like acupuncture is great and wonderful. Massage, yes, please, all day long. And lately I've been doing a lot more work with like registered dietitians. So for my mamas who want to do diet control for gestational diabetes or for working with preconception, that they're wanting to kind of overhaul their nutrition. Even a lot of my women who are in perimenopause, I've been doing a lot more work with dietitians to get them kind of on track. Because oftentimes, like, we think we're eating well and we're very healthy, but we're actually not. Or you're hearing all of these podcasters on social media who have absolutely no medical background and real training whatsoever, who are spouting things out to do and to follow. So often, like, we're inundated with so much information, but yet now who do we believe? So I try to work, based on what somebody's needs are. If I can get in even just occasional, a couple of visits with a dietitian, I think it can be really beneficial.
Yep. And mental health services for sure. I mean, like people do premarital counseling. Why aren't you doing counseling for yourself or your partner around how life is going to change when you bring a baby home? And then making sure moms, especially while they're pregnant, know what postpartum mental health services are available to them should they need any help at all.
No, Kelly, I think that's such a great point because again, what society feeds us is this ideal fantasy of what this family life is going to look like once the infant comes. And oftentimes it is much harder, especially as a first time mom, with adjusting to certain things than is anticipated. So I think having a lot of counseling during your prenatal period is crucial, right? I do a lot of work with my clients on their relationship together because you don't know what kind of baby you're going to get. You have no idea what their temperament or personality is going to be like. You might not function without 6 hours of sleep, and the partner might not function without 8 hours of sleep. And now nobody is sleeping and everybody's hating each other. So I think it's really, really crucial to have some type of counseling services even before the baby comes that you can then continue and build on during that first 12 months of postpartum when things are typically kind of the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
I love this conversation, and I'm glad we are shifting into the mental health piece because um, I was a prenatal massage therapist for 26 years, and I think that the mind-body connection is so vitally important. And we've just had Ivy Margulies join us. So once she gets on camera and on unmuted, we're going to let her introduce herself. But I want to move into this mind-body connection a little bit more. So many people say they feel unseen after birth. How can we shift the narrative so that caring for mental and emotional health becomes as prioritized as caring for the baby?
So I'm going to start with, can we please get rid of healthy mom, healthy baby line? It irks me to death. Yes, we all want a healthy baby and a healthy mom, but in our world, what that means is an alive mom and an alive baby. And you can't even start to begin to care about someone's emotional, psychological component, their emotional side, if all you care about is their heart is beating, right? And again, it's because we are essentially an area of high litigation. And so as long as somebody's mother and baby is alive, they think their job is done and they move on. So I really despise that, because if we really cared about the healthy mom, we would include the emotional and psychological aspect of that healthy mother.
Yeah, sorry.
I know and I get it. I get that people love that line. And it's almost like a line that was thrown in to try to make people feel better about their birth experience, to like minimize the fact that it was traumatic for them. Like, well, you should just be grateful because you're alive and your baby's alive. And like, so sorry, no. Yeah, I can still hold space for two things at exactly the same time, right? Which is that, yes, I'm happy to be alive and that my baby's alive. And I'm really angry about what my birth was like. Like, they can live under the same roof at the same time.
I think subconsciously there's a sort of kind of fear of uncovering that Pandora's box, right? There's a sort of fear of thinking about the mom and focusing on whole person care. Could you imagine? It's like how many things would be happening, if, moms were freely and openly encouraged right postpartum, when they're in the hospital and their baby's crying and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't know how to breastfeed, and the lactation consultant hasn't come in yet. If they start being able to freely say, I'm really feeling very stressed out and overwhelmed right now. Or in that 1 or 2 days postpartum, when you get home and again, you're having lactation problems, you're already becoming sleepless, but you're also recovering postpartum. I think there's some sort of a little bit of fear in normalizing honest conversations around the experience that we get
It,
to have as women that go through this.
do you think there's an element to it though? So I'm going to use one experience for me. When I was doing my doctoral project, I did it on reproductive grief. And the providers that I was working with at the time refused to participate. And so they wouldn't screen people. So I ended up doing all of it myself, which is fine. But there was an element to society in which visits are so short that they don't have time. So I agree with you, Andee, about opening that Pandora's box. And when that box gets opened, as providers, we have to be willing to sit in that with them, right? And then one of the other components was that they didn't feel well versed enough in dealing with reproductive grief, and because I have history of loss, that it should have been on me to do so. And I think there's a huge learning curve and a needed educational aspect for providers, because you have to learn how to sit in that uncomfortability with your person until it becomes comfortable for you. And that can be really hard to do. But I think it is so utterly necessary if we are going to tackle birth trauma for women, right? Because we have to be willing to sit in that with them, no matter how hard or difficult that is for us individually.
And then we have to learn what resources are available. So in that moment, we can send her off on her way and know that she's going to be cared for in the right way.
Exactly. That's where I think another thing that's I think it's not really a conversation a lot of times. I think that's where I think it comes into have a kind of individualized care. I don't think postpartum, I don't think the whole care around motherhood or even before you have the baby, like Abby, like you mentioned, when people go through infertility problems and all of those things, I don't think it can be a one size fits all. I think it
Welcome to our medical
looks
model of
different
care.
for every woman depending on what they're going through.
Yeah. And even if it's the same woman, she may have who has 3 children, she may have 3 different experiences. So the one size fits all is not even per person. It's kind of per child.
Yeah,
Per
exactly.
And allowing them the ability to voice their unhappiness and whatever that surrounded that situation, right? That it's okay to say that you didn't enjoy something, or that you felt violated in some way, or that your expectations weren't met or lived up to. Like, that's okay to be able to have a much needed space, right? Women need to feel safe that they can voice these things.
Yep.
You're muted.
Hello. I'd like to pause there for a moment, and I want to bring Ivy into the conversation. Ivy, can you do a brief introduction of yourself? And I'm going to repeat the question for you. Um, we originally we veered a little bit, which is fantastic. The question was, many people say that they feel unseen after birth. How can we shift the narrative so that caring for mental and emotional health becomes as prioritized as caring for baby?
That's a big question. I still don't have a voice. Hi, I'm Dr. Ivy Margulies. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in the full spectrum of maternal mental health and reproductive maternal health. So everything from postpartum to fertility, infertility, to fetal demise, miscarriage, and everything encompassing a woman's reproductive lifespan cycle. This is a really important question. It's been around for a while because women tend to get tossed around as not as important as the baby once the baby arrives. And then prior to baby being or arriving, uh, it's all about managing the pregnancy. And OBGYNs, at least typically in the history of women's pregnancies, don't get into mental health issues. And then the pediatrician doesn't consider the woman his patient, considers the baby the patient. So women often get ignored in terms of what they're needing and their mental health needs are. I think it's changed a bit in Los Angeles for sure, where the pediatrician or the nurse certainly takes a little more time to check in with the new mom. But across America, that does not happen. And somehow we have to somehow give more importance to this transition, this unbelievable rite of passage for women who give birth and treat it as a sacred experience that it is. And giving women more time off before they have to go back to work, paid leave, putting more support systems in place for women so that they're cared for as they bring their infant home. And because families are now so displaced and they don't live together in community as much as they used to, women can often feel isolated and lonely as they begin their new identity as a mother. It's a really tricky question. It's not an easy answer whatsoever. And I don't know if I'm repeating what everyone else might have already been saying, but it's really sad that women aren't held with more respect and esteem for what their bodies have just gone through and still need time to recover. 8 weeks is not enough, even just for them to recover, let alone transition possibly back to a work environment while they're breastfeeding and probably still bleeding. So it's really inhumane at the end of the day. We should all move to Sweden. And it's a really tough question.
I totally agree with you. I also think, like in all ways, society gives, women that idea that they have to bounce back and that they have to bounce back quickly. And I often see women are like, oh, I haven't lost all my baby weight. And I'm like, are you 3 months out? I mean, you haven't lost, how long did it take you to grow the baby? Okay, let's at least give you that length of time back before you start asking about why is your, and then some bodies don't go back to exactly the way they were, and that's okay too.
Also, you're not going back to anything. You are
Right.
moving forward. You grew a life and you have a whole new world now. Why would you don't graduate from high school and want to go back to kindergarten?
Well, let's just say there are some people out there that their best days were in high school and they want to go back. But for the most of us,
Fair.
it's not, right?
Yeah, but you're
Sorry, go ahead, baby.
but Abigail, you bring up the point of lookism and sexism and objectification of our culture of women somehow becoming, these sexual beings again so quickly after having the baby. And it's just added pressure for them to feel guilt and shame and not good enough. Just pour it on, pour it on that women don't get back into their skinny jeans, 9 months to even a year later. Like it's not going to happen. You need to give yourself time and patience and acceptance that what your body is just the gift your body is just, produced. It's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
It really is so amazing. And to normalize, right, those changes in our bodies that are happening to pretty much almost all of us, right? Like stretch marks, you carried this baby, your hips have widened, your rib cage has wide, like all of this is normal and all of this is okay. And becoming a mother does not make you less than or less sexy or, any of those things where yes, we're transitioning into another role, but we're morphing, like, right? We're like that butterfly that we've gone into our chrysalis and now we've come out as this new beautiful thing, right? And embracing that regardless of, the background noise of society telling us we're less than.
I think the bounce back culture is terribly dangerous. I mean, you know, I've had moms, asking me like, how can I lose the weight quickly? Like, I just don't feel like myself, which, well, that's another thing, but they want to look a certain way. And then should I take this supplement or should I take this drug? And it's just, yeah, bounce back. There's nothing to bounce back from. You're bouncing towards a new you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're, I always say like you're never going to have your pre-baby body back because now you have a warrior body that just carried these babies and is taking care of them. Like it's an even better body. It's amazing.
Yeah, Kelly, and
And I want women to feel that and feel free of that before they hit menopause. Because that's really one of the biggest things that women reach once they hit that age is this feeling of utter freedom in who they are and what they look like and just knowing how much value they hold. And I would love to see that shift happen for women when they become a mother, not for later on in life when they've hit menopause.
yeah, and that's where I think it's really important for us to contribute to shifting the conversation, right? Rather than having it be focused on bouncing back, to be able to, at least with our clients, shift the conversation to what your body has done. The things that you've overcome, even mentally, with the hormonal drop right after you give birth and all of those things, how you're stronger, who you've become as a person through transitioning to motherhood. I think we're fortunate as women to get to have this amazing experience. I could not compare motherhood to anything else in life. It's a very quick shift that happens and it's absolutely amazing. So I think the more we continue to talk about it and see it that way, the more I think we can replace the toxic conversations that are out there. Including the bouncing back things and the trend of the videos. I'm sure all of you ladies have
Oh,
seen
yeah.
where it's like I saw this, oh my God, this made me cringe so bad a couple of days ago. A mother literally had just had her baby. I think it was like 3 weeks prior. She was dressed in a gown, in a ball gown. She was holding the baby like a football and making soup, like warm autumn soup. And I was like, what are we showing women here?
In what realm?
Then as a woman who's gone through postpartum, who has a child herself, then you go and read the comments and you notice that some people really believe this is reality. And that's where it becomes, I think, very destructive. Because me, I've gone through postpartum. I know what postpartum is like. You can kind of like not fool me. I sit there and I laugh at it. But I think women that have not gone through motherhood, imagine how destructive it is mentally to walk into it expecting that you're going to be able to make warm autumn soup while being in a ball gown 3 weeks postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah. They're being sold, this idea
Yeah.
that justice doesn't exist and isn't attainable. Right. So and it's hard. And to your point too, Andee, I feel like in rewriting that narrative, I often hear that I was, and instead it should be I am,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise we're living back there and not living right here.
Yeah, and that's again where I think it really comes into it really becomes very helpful to have a village of professionals that you kind of have in your arsenal prior to embarking on this journey, because we can also serve as reality check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So if a client comes to us and shows us something as ridiculous as the video that I mentioned, we can say, hey, that's not what it's going to look like, but it's going to be beautiful and challenging in its own ways, and I can help you navigate this.
The other story that we've been telling women forever was that as soon as they have their sweet baby, everything's perfect and this is the happiest you're ever going to be. And Yes. And so, as Abigail was saying before, two things can be true at the same time. You can be struggling, you can have some, depressive issues, marital issues, whatever it is. And you can still be very happy, but it's not this like as soon as the baby's in your arms, life is over and you don't have to work for anything again because this is your whole life.
Yeah, it's like people think they have to have this like unipolar life, right? And it's like, no, like both of those two things can be housed under that roof together, and that's okay, right? Like we can hold two emotions and two ideas and all sorts of things that also conflict, like when you think about how unhappy you are and how happy you are all at the same time, right? You think, how can that even be? But it is, and it's actually very normal, and I think that's the biggest key, is normalizing what we consider abnormal because of all these videos of these women, but in reality is actually very normal.
Yep.
So, on that note, I'd love to hear everyone give us one piece of advice that you would give to new and expecting parents.
Just one.
I know.
It can be more than one.
I always just go back to community. Like for me, I live on the East Coast. My entire family's on the West Coast. But I have been here long enough that I have my own family. I have watched all of my friends from the beginning of their relationships, through marriage, through their pregnancies. I met many of their babies the same moments they did. I have built this tribe around me, and for every stage in life, we've got each other's backs. And when someone's going through something, whether it's not you're going through pregnancy or delivery, but when someone's dealing with something, we always have a point person, and they are the guard. They guard the family, and I think partners can do a lot of that. But have that one person who is like, hey, will you take care of this text thread and keep everyone updated so I don't have to? Can you follow the schedule of whoever's dropping off food or wants to go on a walk today? I can't do it. Can you do it? But have someone there that you trust that has your back. Hopefully that's your partner, but they might need some support too, and who's just going to like rally around that new family and like keep them safe. And sometimes that's just from nosy neighbors, or your aunt wants to come over for 5 hours when your nipple might be cracked and you're still wearing a diaper.
I think one thing as well, I mean, I think all of that is so spot on and so true. And I think the other component is, remember that this experience, this journey, this story is yours and yours alone. I know often the one thing we love to do is always share our story with others. And that's okay if you're open to receiving whatever that person's journey or story was, but also at the same time remembering that their story is theirs and your story is yours, right? I think that's a big thing for women who are currently pregnant, because they'll hear, and oftentimes what they hear more of is the negative experiences that people have had over the positive experiences, and that can really get into here, right? So it's also okay to say, thank you for wanting to share your journey, but I'd love to hear that afterwards, and being in your bubble.
Boundaries all the time.
My biggest piece of advice would be prepare for you as well, not just for the baby. I think there tends to be so much preparation revolving around the baby, what kind of clothes the baby needs, the nursery, the sound machine, the diapers, the registry, it's absolutely insane that no one most of the time does not think about preparing for themselves. What is my journey personally gonna look like as the individual human being that I am, aside from being or becoming a mom? So I think something that's really important, I think, is to have some sort of wellness plan prior to giving birth, that you can use in that recovery period afterwards. And actually this week I'm going to be posting a 2-page wellness plan on my website at yourwellnessmomfriend.com, that anyone can go ahead and download it. And that will really help. It's very similar to a birth plan, right? I think there has been conversation in the past years around birth plans. I think not enough women still know about it. But I think just as important as a birth plan, for example, I think it's having a wellness plan to help you in this transitional journey.
That's an excellent point. Um, I would say it's very important to already have a reproductive psychiatrist that you've touched base with prior to birth because you don't know how you're going to feel hormonally or recover from birth. And you may need a psychiatrist when you're in crisis, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're still going to be waiting 2 weeks generally for that initial appointment. And I've seen too many women come to me in crisis, never thinking postpartum is going to happen to them. And just having the initial appointment out of the way so they have the psychiatrist ready to go is really important, as well as a psychologist who has done a baseline with them. So to monitor how their mental health is going as they transition to motherhood. These are two things women do not prepare for prior to having generally their first baby, because they don't think it's going to happen to them. They're too focused on, you know, to your point, preparing for the baby, the bottles, the stroller, the baby room, XYZ. But I really think that needs to be part of standard of care before a woman gives birth. I have to add one more thing, which is don't be afraid to say yes to help. Someone to come in and hold the baby so you can shower, take a nap. These seemingly little things are huge to a new mother who is so overwhelmed with the crying, the bleeding, and the leaking that it's and the sleep deprivation that this little wonderful act of support is huge for any new mom.
Yeah. I'd like to say two things about that. I absolutely agree about psychiatric care, but we also have to advocate for this to be the standard of care, that insurance companies will pay for it, or if moms can't afford it, they have access to it. So all of us in this sphere, I think, have a lot of advocacy work to do. And asking for help, when I was going through something years ago, I had all these people, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And I hated that question because now I had the onus of like, how am I going to make a plan for how Abigail can take care of me? The best advice I ever got was when someone says, what can I do for you? Just say, what did you have in mind? Because you don't know what their capacity is, and maybe they're going to offer to come hold the baby. Maybe they're going to offer to do all of your grocery shopping for the next month, or like you just don't know. So just simply say, what did you have in mind? And then let that person do what they are capable of doing. It made it a lot easier for me. And I was not someone who could ask for help. Once I learned how to accept it, my life just became grander. And I think I'm a better caregiver too because of it.
I love this. This has been so fantastic. Thank you all for lending your expertise to this really fun conversation. We're going to open it up to any questions that anybody may have. So you can either put it in the chat and I'm happy to ask, or you can unmute and ask. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so that everyone can speak for